That night at the county fair.
That was Shane Rogers. She's crazy. You're listening to Mornings of the Lone Star. Good morning, Montgomery County. It's 8:22. I'm running late as usual. That's a typical thing for a Monday morning. Serious traffic on the northbound by the Woodlands Parkway, by the way, if you're just now getting through it. Good luck getting through that. Stalled vehicle and then an accident. So it's a twofer on 45 North right now. But you're listening to Lone Star in the Mornings. It is the end of March. Hope you guys enjoyed this month. I know I did. I'm looking forward to April, especially with the county fair coming up starting the 4th of this week. I hope you guys are excited about the rodeo. But now it's me, Mornings of Lone Star with Dick. We have a huge lineup today. We got the Mark and Cindy show, we got me, and we got the weekly business hour with Rick Schisler. All that coming up all this morning by 12 p.m. But right now, I have a special guest in the studio. I have you got an interesting name, Barry C. Siegel. Barry C. Siegel, welcome to Lone Star in the Mornings.
Thanks for having me.
And you have something interesting to share about with the listeners of Montgomery County and the world, because we are on the internet, so there are some listeners from around the world. But this is for Montgomery County. You do a thing called Beat the Blues.
That's right.
And it's not just a thing; it's a book. It's a whole deal, isn't it?
It's basically an instructional manual and a toolkit, and it's designed to provide a sound recipe to increase productivity while improving your life. That's a long explanation. Basically, it's combining my kind of two lives. I've been very much involved in success achievement philosophy for a long time, and in music for, my goodness, close to 50 years. More than 50 years.
Yeah, that's one thing, because when I was reading about this right now is your history, your background supports Beat the Blues, what your mission is with the book. So I think it's important to let the audience know, because there's a lot of self-help books or motivations or success books, and what's neat about yours is you use music.
That's right, and I also don't make any promises.
Good.
It combines something that happened to me as a child. When you hear the term beat the blues, there's two ways of looking at it. One is to clap your hands, stomp your feet, snap your fingers to the music. That's how you beat the blues. But there's also the state of mind, depression. And this beat the blues means to defeat feelings of depression. And when you combine the two, it's to defeat feelings of depression by using music. And this happened to me when I was 11 years old. My mother had a nervous breakdown. And that's when I saw, firsthand what depression was all about. And I was 11, my brother was 5. And my dad didn't know what to do, because in those days, this is the 50s, they treated depression with shock therapy, which is just as horrendous as it sounds. So my mom was going to go away, and we didn't know if she was ever going to come back. So my dad panicked, and he begged one of his employees if his wife could quit her job, take a pay cut, and come live with us. And thank goodness she said yes. And then I learned a very valuable lesson. Again, I'll say this is the 50s. Her name was Annabelle Patterson, and she was African American, which was not a good thing to be in the 50s. The prejudice was terrible. She came into the house, and I was used to having a mother who had virtually everything, who was always really down. This lady comes in who has nothing, and she is the most cheerful person I've ever met in my life. And what she brought into the house was music that I'd never heard before. She played blues, gospel, and jazz all day long. And in the 50s, a white kid wasn't supposed to listen to this music, and I just loved it. And I knew right then and there I was going to do something with the music. And I did become a musician, but I learned this valuable lesson that, here's this lady who has nothing. My mother has everything, so money is not something that cures depression. It's something within you, and my conclusion was that Annabelle heard music, and my mother just heard voices. I didn't have any idea I'd end up writing a book 60 years later, but that's really the basis of the book.
So really the book has a deep history with you.
It really does. I didn't realize when I wrote it as a leave behind for my grandkids, because I've been very, very fortunate. I've gotten just about everything I ever wanted out of life, and I learned it through trial and error, making a lot of mistakes on the way, so I just wanted to leave something to my grandkids that this is what I learned. Why don't you start where I leave off instead of, starting all over again?
That's cool. So far so good, or Has anyone told you about how they like the book? How's the book been received?
I'm getting very, very good feedback in that, nobody's saying, hey, I made $1 million on it. It's just that they said, it's really, really good life lessons. And most people are saying, I'm going to pass it down to my kid. Because this generation, they've got it really tough. This is the most negative generation. Every one of the generations that I go back with, each generation had an easier path than the parent. This generation is going to have it a lot tougher than the parents now. So I think they need something like this.
Yeah, hopefully it'll become our jazz music, something like that.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be nice? And, I do use philosophy that goes back as much as 4,000 years. I don't go back 4,000 years, but it's amazing how I've found that the difference between success and failure was always spoken about starting in ancient Egypt and, all the way through. Of course, it's in the Bible. And, the most recent success story was something called The Secret, which was a DVD that was that broke on the Oprah show. Mm-hmm. Tremendous success. And it also goes back to, ancient philosophy. My only problem with it was they make it seem so easy, and it's not. The first step is you've got to believe that you can do it. But that's not where it ends. I mean, some of this stuff leads people to believe all you have to do is think wonderful thoughts and they will come to you. Well, they might, but you're going to have to work for them, and you're going to have to, come up with a path to get to them. You don't just run to the mailbox and expect checks to come to you. So that's why I wanted to do something that, was certainly a positive message, but a realistic positive message. And that's why the music is part of it.
Well, that's a good idea because I love music. And so any type of message that comes with the music, I'll check it out just because of my interest in music.
Obviously, in your line of work, you would be. But I find that virtually everybody has a favorite song.
Yes.
And it's their favorite because it takes them back to a time and place when they were at their peak. And they want to relive it. What I don't understand is why don't they wake up to that song every morning instead of some horrible buzz from their iPhone? If you wake up to your favorite song, you're going to get off to a much better start.
I actually do that.
Oh, that's great.
I pick my music before I go to bed, and I'm like, all right, what am I going to wake up to tomorrow morning? So,
but the power of music goes deeper than that. My wife and I do some charity work, and we play at old age homes,
mm-hmm.
and we'll play, and a lot of the residents have dementia or.
I think I know where you're going because I volunteer for musicians that go, and I've made a video, and that was one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen. Is you see this person just sitting still, and then all of a sudden
they light up.
Yep, the lights go on upstairs, and they're having the greatest time of their lives.
They don't know what happened 2 seconds ago, and I will sing a song from the 50s, and they will sing along with me. They haven't heard the song in 40 years. Isn't that it's a different part of the brain. Now, unfortunately, if you're familiar with any of the lyrics from the 50s, they don't make any sense. Like, who put the bump in the bump, a bump, a bump, who put the
ring, the dang, yeah.
I like who put the ram in the ram-a-lam-a ding dong, or tutti frutti, ah Rudy. So, they get a temporary, the rhythm, but then there's no long-lasting effect. Now, in the book, describe, at least 50 songs that have the rhythm, but they've also got great messages. From the 50s, there was a song by Frank Sinatra called High Hopes. It wouldn't go over today, but in its day, it was wonderful. And Curtis Mayfield had Keep on Pushing, James Brown, I Feel Good. There's songs today, there's a new one called Happy. So you have to look for them. Mm-hmm. But if you have both the rhythm and a message, then you've really got something. And that's kind of the principle behind my Beat the Blues book. Because when I say we have a toolkit, I wrote 7 original songs that kind of summarize each chapter, and they are designed to help you reprogram a part of your subconscious mind that I refer to as the success GPS. I'm sure you're going to ask, what is that all about? Well, to me, a GPS is still a new invention. To you, you probably grew up with it. But I love this thing. It's the only invention I've ever seen where you just tell it where you are, where you want to go, and it maps everything out for you. So you would think that people could use their brains in a similar fashion. But the problem is that I do believe we have a GPS device. The problem is it's been programmed by others. And if you think about it, our subconscious minds, it started with our parents. Mm-hmm. The first thing they had to tell us was, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. These are your shortcomings, because they had to protect us. And then, there were friends and relatives and coaches and teachers, and everybody basically told us what we could not do. Everybody can kind of count on one hand how many times they were told what they could do. So now you want to take control of your GPS, and all that's in there is this negativity that you've heard all your life. You can't do this, you can't do this. And in order to be successful, you've got to override that. So how do you override that? Well, a similar fashion to when you go to Google, why do certain websites get to the first page? They have used SEO, and SEO really is based on the energy that was put into the website to build the audience, to make it user-friendly, and the repetition of the right keywords over and over and over and over again. So to get to the top of a search engine, you need energy, repetition. Energy, repetition. Now to make it really effective, I would add something called rhythm, because that'll enhance both. And then you throw in rhyme, because it's a lot easier to remember words that rhyme. So energy, repetition, rhythm, and rhyme. That's how you get to the top of your success GPS. What vehicle combines all of those four things? None other than music.
Yeah.
So what I have done is I've written what I feel are the right affirmations and set them to the right kind of music, which I believe is blues music, because of all the music genres, the one that best utilizes energy, repetition, rhythm, and rhyme is the blues.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And the blues, do you know how the blues came about?
Not to the core of it. Where did it come about?
The slaves brought it over from West Africa. It's funny how something wonderful came out of something terrible. But the slaves came over with their West African folk roots, and they came to the United States, and they were exposed to European music. The two would have never gotten together otherwise, and they're totally different. The West African music emphasizes the second and fourth beat. The European music emphasizes the first and the third. The African music introduces notes that are not on the European scale. If you know music, they flatten a couple of notes that are not recognized in European music. So the combination of these two diametrically opposed forces fused together. And the amazing thing is, how did it result when the slaves were not allowed to sing, dance, read, write, or play a musical instrument? They found out, the slave owners found out, if they let them sing in the fields, they were twice as productive, 3 times as productive. And the slaves were smart, so they could do this, so they started to write in code. So what the slave owner heard them singing about was not what they were really singing about. They were passing messages. And that's why today it's not unusual in blues language for the word bad to mean good. So that's how it came about. So right from the beginning, this was the most productive kind of music because it's in the history.
That's really interesting. Well, we're going to take a quick break, Barry. Yes. And we'll be back. When we come back from Mornings with Lone Star after a couple tunes, maybe some good tunes. I hope they're good. But I want to get to know you a little bit better. And then also I want to know more about your history with music, because it sounds like you know a lot about music and you applied a lot of thought into this book, because I'm holding the book right now, and it's pretty impressive.
Thank you.
And so it'd be important. I want to know how it got into this. So,
okay.
But we're going to listen to a couple tunes on Mornings with Lone Star. We'll be right back. Here's some Dilbert McClinton, Never Been Rocked Enough. You're listening to Lone Star in the Mornings. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Judy Deo, Executive Director of Tamagua Healthcare Ministries. Tamagua is a Christian ministry that, by the grace of God and in response to the love of Jesus, provides quality health care, offers hope, and restores dignity to uninsured, low-income families and individuals in Northwest Harris County and Montgomery and Waller counties. As a primary care safety net clinic, we provide for the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual needs of our patients. and we do it only with the financial support of the community in which we serve. Tamagua receives no government funding. To find out how you can help or to make a donation, visit our website at www.tamagua.org. Tamagua is spelled Tomagwa. Thank you, and God bless you.
Let's go to Lukenbach, Texas.
Tired of Waylon, Willie, and the boys? Join me, Gordon Lockhart, for Beethoven, Bach, and the Boys. Every Saturday from 8 to midnight on Lone Star Classical Music After Dark. Symphonies, concertos, and sonatas by composers such as Mozart, Tchaikovsky, and Bernstein. That's Lone Star Classical Music After Dark. Every Saturday from 8 to midnight on irlonestar.com.
Dilbert McClinton, never been rocked enough. Thank you for waiting for a short break. We're back with Mornings with Lone Star. I hope you enjoyed that song. And I'm sitting here with my special guest this morning, Barry C. Siegel of Beat the Blues. We've been talking about his book, his most recent book. I mean, when did you write this? When did you finish?
Oh, I finished about 4 months ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's in the studio this morning, Lone Star Studios, talking about Beat the Blues, which is a sound recipe to increase productivity while improving your life using music and, I would just say,
success
knowledge.
Achievement.
Yes, success
philosophy.
achievement. Yeah.
I'm so glad you led in with Delbert McClinton.
Yeah?
Because, when I say blues, people might think of only down-home black music. What you just played was blues.
Right,
it's based upon blues. Blues is a genre. It started in the cotton fields, but it evolved into jazz and rhythm and blues and swing and even country. And what you just heard was, that's based on blues.
Mm-hmm.
And you added the horns, which make it rhythm and blues. There's a little bit of country flavor in there, but it's a fusion. The best music is a fusion where you throw together stuff that doesn't seem like it belongs together. Like in 1962, Ray Charles revolutionized the world when he came out with an album doing country music. And it was, at first nobody wanted to play it, but country music has never been the same since. So that's when blues came into country. So
That's cool. Yeah. So, but I want to get to know a little bit more about you, Barry. I know this book, especially when you have content like what this book is covering, it needs to have a history to it. And I think it's important for the reader to understand where you come from when you're reading this, because we know you've been involved with music for 40 years or more, right?
Yeah, it's more.
More than that.
Well, it started, like I said before, when I was 11 years old, I started fooling around with it, and I started to become a pretty competent sax player by 14. And
are you just being modest, or what are you being competent?
Well, at 14 I was competent. 16 I was pretty good.
Okay.
There was a huge hit record at that time called Short Shorts by the Royal Teens. Very, very big. And fortunately, the sax player on the record, his dad wouldn't let him go to Vegas. My dad would. So I became the sax player with the Royal Teens. So,
oh, wow.
So it was kind of downhill after that, because the better I got, the less money I made.
That's an interesting system they have there in the music industry.
Oh,
yeah. So.
Yeah. And then finally, when I was 28, I wrote a huge hit called Moonflight. And it was a gimmick record. This was when the Apollo was going to the moon. And I was with Buddha Records, and they had a bunch of hit records, and they wanted some kind of a gimmick. And basically what I did was, supposedly the astronaut landed on the moon. He was speaking to the moon people. He would ask questions, and they would answer in the voice of a hit record. And it sold well over a million copies.
Oh, wow.
I only did it because the record label promised me unlimited studio time. And I gave them the hit record, and they gave me about an hour in the studio, didn't like what I did. And that was the end of my first-time music career, because I said, I can't do this anymore. I decided to go into advertising, thinking that I could write jingles. And how I got into advertising, it was just very, very fortunate, because I really wasn't qualified, because I had just done music, and I was a part-time bookkeeper at my father's plumbing supply business. I mean, that really makes for a good resume, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Well, somehow, some way, this lady felt sorry for me or whatever, and I wanted the job so badly. She gave me a shot, and that's how I got into a niche market in the advertising field called recruitment advertising, which was help wanted advertising, which doesn't sound like much, but in the late 70s in Houston, the Houston Chronicle every Sunday had over 300 pages of help wanted ads. So I moved from New York. I was working for the company in New York. They transferred me to Houston. And it was just the right place at the right time, and I was going up and down the street getting companies that needed people, and I could write good help wanted ads. And, a good percentage of those Chronicle ads were mine. But then in 1982, I had moved to Houston because it was supposedly recession-proof, and I was in New York where, my goodness, there was one recession after another, one newspaper strike after another, and when it was a strike, I couldn't make any money. And we were standing on gas lines because the world was supposedly running out of oil. So I moved down to Houston, did great. And then all of a sudden, 1982, there was an oil crash. And the Chronicle went from 300 pages to 3. And I didn't know what I was going to do because I had burned all my bridges in New York. This was the only thing I could do. I wasn't going to go back to playing the saxophone. And I was pretty close to desperate. We just moved into a huge house. And my deal was a very, very small salary and a very, very big commission. There are no commissions on ads that don't run. So I was in a panic, and I was actually going to the hospital once a week with giant hives from stress. Didn't know what I was going to do. Somehow I came upon a book called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter. You don't think about this. What do you say when you talk to yourself? Most of us say terrible things to ourselves. We would never allow anybody else to say these things to ourselves, yet we say them to ourselves. And I was very guilty of it. And I started to learn affirmations. But what I did, I decided to put music to it. And I started to use this for myself, my family, and my employees. And I started to read everything there was about success achievement. And I came up with this formula where I put affirmations to music. And, that might be a great lead-in because in my book that I wrote, 35 years later, I used this technique, which I had kind of forgotten through the years. But it helped me become extremely successful. And then when, we hit another deep recession in 2007, I hung around for a while, but then I decided I've got to retire. And then I decided to write this book. And the basis of this book is using these songs that I have written to reprogram our GPS. And could we play one of them right now?
Yeah,
it's
sure.
called Beat the Blues Part 1.
Beat the Blues Part 1, Barry Siegel.
Sometimes the way you feel is not ideal. Play some music and rhythm inspires you to heal. What you hear in your mind's ear is what you see. What you see in your mind's eye is what you did. Beat the blues simply by thinking you can.
Is that you singing?
Yes.
Wow.
That's part of a paradox. That's a story all to itself. My parents thought that I had a great voice as a child. I didn't have a great voice. I had a great ear. I was blessed with a great ear. So whatever record they played for me, I could sing it almost immediately. So they decided, take me to the recording studio. So I got all excited. I thought it was going to sound like Frank Sinatra. They brought this record home and they played it. And it sounded kind of like, because of you. And I listened to it and I said, I'm never going to do that again. I was so embarrassed. But I loved the music. And then Annabelle started playing Louis Satchmo Armstrong for me. And Louis Prima and later Little Richard, James Brown. So instead of using my voice, I started to imitate people. And then I started playing the sax. So that voice that I developed was kind of to hide my real voice, but to also, it was a fusion between Louis Armstrong, Louis Prima, sounds of my saxophone, and my own thing, and it allowed me to overcome this. I was a very shy kid, and also never wanted to hear my real voice again. So that's what I developed. And when I use that voice, people just love it. So that's my natural voice, but that's what I use.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded good. I was like, wait a second, is this Barry?
That's right. And the most important thing is people remember it. And I want them to remember, you can beat the blues simply by thinking you can.
Now, with this, we're gonna be closing down this segment of Mornings with Lone Star. We got a special guest coming at 9:00, Barry. But I want to give you an opportunity to tell people where they can find you.
Terrific. Yes, the best way to find me and my works is at barrysea.com. That's BARRYSEA.com. It's sea like the ocean. barrysea.com.
Okay, barrysea.com. For more on the beats and blues, make sure to follow up on our Facebook and our website. We're going to be posting stuff about Barry, where to find this good information, especially with the music. I can't believe that's your voice. That really got me going. I was like, wait a second, what is this all about? But thank you so much for coming in today, and I hope the listeners here in Montgomery County and the world will check you out. It's barrysea.com. If you're looking for a sound recipe to increase productivity while improving your life, make sure to check out Beat the Blues by Barry C. Siegel at barrysea.com. We're going to take a quick break. Coming up next on Mornings with Lone Star, we're going to be talking about the Energy Network Expo, which is happening April 3rd in the Woodlands Waterway Marriott Hotel with Tony Moto coming up here on Mornings with Lone Star. Right now, though, here's some Matt Caldwell, Trying to Fall. You're listening to Lone Star in the Mornings.
Hey everyone, this is Tina, your host from Retro Saturdays. I wanted to invite you to visit the Lone Star Studios here in downtown Conroe, Texas. We're all volunteers here, and we need your help in serving the Montgomery County area. Radio media is a fun field to be in. Lone Star Internet Radio serves Montgomery County with news, current events, local programming, and of course, music. If you are interested in volunteering and sharing your talents in media, go to irlonestar.com and let us hear from you. Lone Star Internet Radio, serving Montgomery County from the heart of downtown Conroe.